Welcome to the Art Center's gallery talk from the Corrine Woodman Gallery, Conversations from the Corrine Woodman Gallery. We're talking today with Deanna White, who is exhibiting August 4 through September 18 with two bodies of work. And we're first going to ask Diana, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became an artist.
Well, I always loved art. My mom painted watercolors quite a bit, and I've just always, I don't know, I've always been fascinated to go to art museums when I was a child. And after I got my AA in dental assisting, and then I later became a medical assistant, that was kind of my job. So then I could be an art major the rest of the years I went to college, which was 3 more years, and loved every second of it. And then life happened, got married, had 3 children, you know, worked for 20 plus, well, 35 years actually, but I was, again, a dental assistant, a medical assistant, some surgeons, and an antique dealer, taught wood shop, did all kinds of jobs. And about 23 years ago, I decided the kids were gone, time to do stuff for myself. And so I took a few art classes again, loved it to death. And I actually started teaching at our local junior college, Shemeketa, for 10 years. And then I joined River Gallery. And anyway, I'm in 4 galleries now, and I just paint all the time. And I love every second of it. So I guess that's kind of the evolution, just the love of art.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the 2 bodies of work that that you are showing in the Corrine Woodman Gallery?
Well, one of the bodies is Me, Myself, and I. Are you hearing me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good. The first one is Me, Myself, and I, which it's based on Picasso. Of course, I've known about Picasso for quite some time. I was fortunate enough to go to the Salzburg Art Academy way back when I was 21 for a summer. And I got to see Picasso then. And then I also got to see Picasso again about 4 years ago when we went to Spain. And of course, there was a Picasso museum in Barcelona. And I was kind of reinvigorated by him and his choice of, I've always enjoyed the Fauvist movement. And I just enjoyed the way he used colors and the way he broke up faces and sort of did abstractions, but you still knew it was a person. So I just kind of leaked from that and did my own, I'm calling it Picasso style portraits. But of course, they're not really, but I'm taking the face, and I literally, it's probably hard to believe, but I always start with my own face, and I do a continuous line drawing, which just means you don't leave your pencil up from the paper as you're drawing, which tends to fragment it and break up the features of your face anyway a little bit. And of course, you could distort it even further, but I don't usually. And then I take those segments and put different colors in the different segments, kind of like Picasso might possibly do. And then I do what I call pencil plastic surgery, because I am not real fond of, you know, some of this stuff going on and this. So I basically changed my portraits into people that I thought would be fun to be, like right behind me, this redhead. I've never been a redhead before, but I can be in a self-portrait.
Isn't
I've
that
done one with my...
Yeah, the power of art and our imagination.
And I did that Queen of Hearts, because obviously I'll never be a queen, but hey, I used to have long dark hair and queen for a day, you know. Anyway, I just have a lot of fun with making myself into different people that, bottom line, don't really look like me anymore, but that doesn't bother me at all, because it's art and you can do whatever you want in art.
Mm-hmm. And
then my other show is
No,
Oregon Landscapes is
let's
pastel.
talk a little bit more about the technique that you use in those portraits. You mentioned you start with a continuous line, but there are collage. So how do you transform
Yes, I
that
start out,
drawing into a collage?
well, I usually almost always paint my canvases red, just because it's my favorite color. And I like that red glow showing through here and there, but not always. And I draw usually on a piece of paper, and I do my continuous line drawing. And then I break it up and I transfer it with transfer paper onto my canvas or my wood substrate or whatever it is I decide to do my collage on. Some of them are framed, like one behind me. Some of them are done on wood substrates. And I just start laying out all my papers. I have a pretty extensive, I don't know if you can see it or not, papers. Can you
Oh,
see them?
yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, I have lots and lots of papers, and I make a lot of my own papers too. So I just start laying out my papers like they would be paint colors, like a palette. And I just start taking out my glue and I start gluing things on. And when it looks good, I stop.
Okay. Is it hard?
And I usually use little pieces of some like chain. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say I add other elements besides paper. Sometimes I add shells or jewelry or chain or lace or something else. So it's not always paper.
How is it hard to decide when to stop?
Not really. In my landscapes, that's true sometimes, but with my portraits, they just start coming alive, and I guess that's the one instinctive thing that I do know when they're done. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not everything I do, because I do a lot of different medias, but in my collages, I usually know.
Yeah.
And I also like to collage other items. I'm just going to throw this out there. Like, this is a box from Goodwill, and I put some chess pieces and domino pieces on the bottom and made a little box out of it. And I'm doing umbrellas next. Like, I'm going to start collaging.
Ooh.
Or actually, I guess they're parasols. Anyway, I like to collage everything. It's so fun.
But
I'm a collage.
you mentioned you're using other media too, and the landscapes that you're going to show are in one of those other media. So tell us about that.
Okay, I'm still breaking up real bad, but I think you asked me what medias I use in my landscape. So pastel mostly, because I plein air a lot, meaning painting outside. And I do that a lot in the spring and summer and fall. And I usually don't complete it on site. I usually bring it home to complete it. And I use when I go plein airing, it's definitely a spot. And I definitely pay attention to where the fields are, you know, the barns and the houses and stuff like that. But I do add completely a lot more elements to it in the fact that I don't really care if a tree is red or pink or purple, but when it's really green, because I find if there's too much green, then for me, it gets a little redundant. So like I have a lot of yellow skies, I have red skies, and sometimes I have sunsets that didn't really exist, but I pretty much, you know, colors I want to do, and I do around. So if the barn is way over here, I might put it here if I decide to. So they're based on reality, but there are also a lot of fantasy involved. And then with my acrylics, it's very much the same. I do I have one right here, plein air, and I start out by using a crayon on a red substrate. And then I go ahead and when I get home, I paint with acrylic. So it's basically the same process, just a different media.
Mm-hmm.
Because pastel, you use sanded paper and pastel.
So what made you decide on pastel? Why pastel?
I think mostly because the ease. I think you're asking me why I paint with pastel sometimes.
Mhm.
And if that's what you asked me,
Yes.
I paint pastel because when you set up outside, you know, sometimes there's a breeze or it's very hot. Sometimes it's even drizzling. And drizzling isn't good for pastel, but anything else pretty much is, because you're not mixing the paints. You've got all your colors laid out, and you can lay one color over another, which is stumbling, but it's just so much easier to me than using acrylic, because acrylic dries quite quickly. I've never been into oil painting. I tried it a few times, just not my favorite media. So yeah, I tend to do most of my landscapes in pastel, but then you have to frame them, and that gets a little expensive after a while. And that's kind of why I started doing acrylic landscapes too. So I like to do both of them very much. And as you can also see, I like to do collage landscapes, which is this one right here.
Yes, yes. How do you select which landscape you want to paint?
How do I reach it?
How do you pick it? Why that view?
Well, oh, good question. Because I like vistas, I do paint a lot of florals, close-up florals also, which I like. So I go to a lot of gardens like City Bright Gardens or Shriners Gardens or whatever, where I can do peony gardens where I can do close-ups of flowers. But I like landscapes the most, but I like a vista. So that means being in a pretty place usually isn't enough. I need to be up high. And I found over the years that it sounds a little strange maybe, but I go to graveyards mostly to paint. And I do that because they tend to be on little knolls, and there's a vista all around that you can look. It's very peaceful and quiet, and not a lot of people there. And as silly as it may sound, I'd like to think that whoever's buried there is happy about us people, you know, my friend and I painting above them. I hope they are. So yes, I pick cemeteries a lot.
That
But
is
not
such a great bit of background information and a good tip too. Quiet, high vista. I like that idea a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about your palette, your color? You said you liked red, but landscapes have a lot
well,
of green.
I just yeah, I do tend, if when you see my landscape, you'll notice I definitely use green. I love greens, but in fact, fall and spring are some of my favorite times to paint, because there's such a variety of color. Well, even in the summer, and you know, like I paint red lollipop type trees, and there really are trees where I paint that are lollipop shaped and that are red, which is kind of cool. I always got real excited about that because I do kind of do, you know, fantasy. But my color palette, I don't know. People always say I love color, and I do. I just I don't know what to say about my color palette. I mean, I know all about color wheels and what's complementary and what isn't, and tertiary, secondary colors, and all that. But I think instinctively, after painting for 22 years, I kind of just know the colors that I like, and I tend to. I have a fairly large palette in my pastel box, but it just seems to kind of come together. If I've used a yellow sky and maybe purple mountains, then it might be time to add some orange, whether the hill is orange or not. So okay. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but it's really just up to my imagination, I guess, on what colors I pick.
Yeah, yeah.
I do have a lot of symbolism in my painting, if you don't mind me mentioning. At least to me, I have birds in all my portraits. And I do that because to me, a bird is a very spiritual creature, and to me represents either a past life or a future life, or just a spirit. And there's something very special about birds. My dad passed away when I was very, very, very young, and there's just these robins keep perching on my telephone line every morning and look at me, and I just kind of imagine that I'm saying hi to my dad. So anyway, birds are always in there, and houses are always in my landscapes, because to me they represent people's lives, and so I always want to have a people component in my landscapes. I don't think I have a single landscape that doesn't have at least 2 or 3 little houses in it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To change the what gets you in the studio?
When I want to be a kid again. No, I'm very young at heart. I'm 71, but I'm very young at heart, and I like to play. And when I want to go play, I go in my studio, and I try not to take myself too seriously unless I'm taking a class, and then I try really hard to do what the other teacher says.
Is that difficult?
So I guess just sense of adventure in play.
Yeah, yeah. Deanna, I think it's really interesting how you say, I do what I want, a yellow sky, a red lollipop tree. And you mentioned that emotion is your guide. So you're an optimistic person, I think, looking at your work.
Yeah, I do live in my own little happy world. I mean, I've had a lot of grief in my life too. I've had a daughter who was mentally ill. I've had several deaths, untimely deaths in my family. And, I'm very aware of reality, but I feel like when I paint that I can make the world any way I want it to be. And I've always said kind of that Alice in Wonderland moment where you kind of step into a painting and you just kind of, it's your own world, you make your own world. And my world is very fun and happy.
It's just great to hear this. I love how you just do in your paintings what you want to do. They're your paintings. I'm going to go to our closing question, which I myself find surprisingly hard, and that is, if money and space was something you didn't have to think about, what is an artwork that you would like to own?
Well, luckily I got to see another artist speak, and I think it was possibly Wendy, I'm not sure, or Beth. Anyway, it was somebody that said the whole art museum, and I love that answer so much. But the person that my mentor, so to speak, is the Fauvists, and particularly Van Gogh. And I actually took a second because I thought you might ask me that question. And this painting of Gauguin's Chair by Van Gogh would be the painting I'd want to own. And you can see by looking at it that he doesn't paint, he paints colors the same way I do, like whatever he wants it to be, that's the color it is.
Yes. So what is the most important?
I don't know, I just admire the texture, the line.
What is the most important thing in a painting for you, the composition or the color?
I don't think you can have a good painting one without the other. In fact, when I teach, my students get really tired of me saying values, 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 and I have to hit myself in the head with that same word, because to me, values and composition are paramount and color is last. That color gives it a real punch. But if you don't have the other two, then I don't think it's going to work as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does actually, and I think it shines through that you are a teacher. Not only because you mentioned it, but you said you put me sort of in my place, saying, well, you can't have one without the other in a good painting. And I thought that was an excellent thing to remember for novice painters, and also for painters who've been at it at a good time. It's sort of look at the traffic rules again a little bit every now and then. And a good painting needs.
You know,
so
it's interesting to me. Can I say one thing about the composition?
Yes.
Really quick. Okay, I was going to say, because my paintings are very simplistic and kind of almost folk arty, they look quite easy to do, I would imagine, to some people. But I'm still thinking about like odd numbers and different heights and textures and colors complementing one another. And if there's three houses, there's usually a conversation between the three. And same with colors, there's usually conversations going on between them. And it's actually very well planned, even though it looks very simplistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think simple looks simple, but it seldom is. So Diane, I would like to thank you.
Thank you. It's Deanna.
Deanna, I'd like to thank you for being an artist, being so clear about it, sharing your work. And I would invite people to make sure that you see her work at the Art Center in the Corrine Woodman Gallery. The first day that the exhibit will be accessible is August 4, and the last day will be September 18, close to fall.